What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the absolute debut project by Linkin Park. Basically, this project is called Xero, and it came out somewhere in 1997. Now, that was the original name of Linkin Park. They had a name before Linkin Park, which was Hybrid Theory, and before that, they had the name Xero, which had the vocalist Mark Wakefield in there instead of Chester Bennington. Chester Bennington showed up in early 1999, but Mark Wakefield was in the band Linkin Park until late 1998. They had done like a series of shows. They made a demo tape, which is the Xero project, which is pretty awesome. It's a dope project. It's kind of hard to find. I would say if you really look around, you can probably find this Xero tape on cassette. There's not many of them. You might be able to find like some bootleg ones or stuff like that, but you might be able to find some bootleg stuff or stuff like that. But it's on YouTube, and that's kind of a good concept about it. But yeah, this is particularly kind of tough to find. I don't know if the Linkin Park Underground fan club ever released it to like their members or something like that. It seems unlikely, but it's too bad that it's too bad that this particular project has never really gotten the exploitation that it needs, just because it's pretty stellar. I would have to say there's only really 2 songs that are not demos of songs that were on Hybrid Theory, but it's still a pretty good particular concept of a project. And I do like the concept of seeing what the vocalist Mark Wakefield was about before he got booted from the band, as far as I kind of went. But this is definitely a decent, pretty solid, above average kind of project here as far as that kind of happens. There's not really a ton of information about this particular stuff. I mean, the Linkin Park wiki has some stuff to say, but it's just kind of minimal, just because, after they became Hybrid Theories where they really started to take off and stuff. But I do like these kind of low-key, kind of underground type fairs as far as that kind of happened, with the band kind of in their most minimal promotion as far as that kind of happens. It's definitely something to seek out. I would definitely recommend it. It's kind of a collector's item, but I think it's worth it as far as that kind of happens, if only for like the 2 songs that are just original Xero songs as far as that kind of happens that didn't show up on Hybrid Theory. So yeah, there's not really a single on here, but on cassette there's 4 songs, and those songs would basically be Rhinestone, Reading My Eyes, Fuse, and Stick and Move. I would say I recommend all the songs on this particular project minus Stick and Move. So that's the only real song that's on side B. So the side A songs are pretty awesome. Fuse is pretty good also. It's just kind of the concept about it. To go ahead and talk about Stick and Move, pretty much I just didn't like the production of that one. That one was just, it kind of felt like Stick and Move was just kind of like a moody type beat that just didn't quite work quite as well. It's kind of like an Egyptian sounding type one that just didn't pull it off quite as well. It's pretty much like the only dud. It just kind of had like an offhanded and just kind of far-fetched kind of production that just didn't hit quite as heavily as like I would have wanted it to. But it's just kind of the concept about it. But these other 3 songs, Rhinestone, which was a demo of Forgotten off of Hybrid Theory, and then Reading My Eyes and Fuse, are pretty good. So I'll go ahead and talk about those, and then I'll get to the original song. So I'm going to talk about Rhinestone first. Rhinestone, like I was saying, is the song Forgotten from Hybrid Theory. So this is a pretty good one. This is like a rugged kind of new metal. Rhinestone is like a rugged kind of new metal hit, I would have to say. Mark Wakefield sounds pretty similar to Chester Bennington on this particular song, and it's just a more skeletal and kind of snaring type hits. It's the same kind of production riffage as far as that kind of happens. It's basically like a demo version of that particular song. Just hits pretty heavily. Just a real kind of riveting and snappy kind of one as far as that kind of goes. Just a little bit more skeletal and kind of more thin layered as far as that kind of happens. But I do like the concept of it. Just a real snaring type one that just hits pretty heavily. It's a pretty good house party starter if you're just looking for something a little bit more independent, a little bit more low key as far as that kind of happens. Just a little bit more down to earth, just kind of more ground level type stuff as far as that kind of happens. So I do like the concept of getting that one. Reading My Eyes is kind of like a grim, biting, kind of ghoulish rock gloom of a song, I would have to say. The hauntiness is very appealing about this particular song, and it's just kind of in a visceral, kind of dreary kind of hit. So I really like this one. It's just a very moody type one. Just really has like some of that kind of swashed, kind of grim. Reading My Eyes just has a swashed and grim, kind of dreary overall tone as far as that kind of happens. Just a really nice, moody one as far as that kind of pitch kind of happens. This is kind of a different taste of Linkin Park as far as that kind of happens. I just don't remember Hybrid Theory or Meteora. Some of the Reading My Eyes is pretty interesting just because I don't remember Hybrid Theory and Meteora, some of their earlier albums, kind of being this kind of ghoulish and just overall ghastly. It's just kind of an interesting concept as far as that kind of happens. Just kind of a biting kind of one that just reminds me of something Evanescence would do, just in like a more new metal sense and just a lot more kind of snappy kind of tone. Definitely like the rock rap kind of feel of that one. And then Fuse is a pretty nice one too. This one's a little bit more ghostly, I would have to say. This one's kind of like, Fuse is basically like a looming kind of ghastly Wu-Tang like rap rock vintage, I would have to say. Fuse is just kind of like a looming kind of ghastly Wu-Tang like rap rock song, I would have to say. It's some vintage kind of late 90s house party feel that it has, definitely. It's just got a dope kind of smoky feel about it. So this one's just kind of like a really kind of ghoulish one. I definitely like the concept of this particular one. This reminds me of something that Mobb Deep or this one just reminds me of something that Mobb Deep or Wu-Tang would have done back in the 90s. I think I do think Mike Shinoda drew some degree of influence from East Coast rap back in the mid 90s as far as that kind of happened. So it's a good concept to kind of get that. I definitely like the kind of more Wu Tang oriented type feels of Fuse. It's a pretty good concept. This is another one that's just kind of more grim, I would have to say. These are two songs, the two original songs on here to showcase the two original songs on here, Reading My Eyes and Fuse, to showcase Linkin Park and just like a different aspect as far as that kind of happens. I just almost wonder if they would have been more like Korn and Evanescence as far as that kind of happened with their initial kind of sound. I'm glad that I do like the sound they started to shift out later, more like Limp Bizkit and stuff like that. But I do like some of this haunting type stuff that just reminds me of Wu Tang as far as that kind of happens, and just like Korn and some of those type folks. It's pretty good. So those three songs is the concept of the album as far as that kind of goes. Definitely some hits on this particular project. Do recommend it if you can find it. It's kind of an ensnaring, it's kind of a hard to get package as far as that kind of happens, but it's definitely worth it. I would have to say, if only for like the two original songs, Reading My Eyes and Fuse, I would have to say it's just some good concepts. Mark Wakefield is pretty good. He's just kind of like a more kind of grainy version of Chester Bennington. Not to say that he's bad, but it's just kind of the concept that you don't really get him on full display as much. I kind of would like to hear more songs with them as far as seeing how some of that could have turned out as far as that kind of happens. But yeah, the basic concept. So I'm going to score this out, me basically recommending 3 songs out of 4 on this particular cassette tape and EP. I would have to say I'm going to go ahead and give this tape like an 8.5 out of 10. Just basically just minus one song, which is the only real problem with it, which is just kind of like a dud in terms of the production fare. It's just the only one that just didn't flesh out. I think I would have preferred another song like Reading My Eyes or Fuse, something like that. Was just kind of the thing about it. This kind of an eerie one. I feel like Stick and Move is just kind of an eerie one, but it just didn't match with like the production fare as far as that kind of went. But yeah, I just would say 8.5. The social score I'm going to give like a 9 out of 10, just because I feel like the appeal of this, they really had a visceral sound. I think they probably would have torn up this. I would have to say, I think if Mark Wakefield would have stuck around, I think they would have had like a more ghastly and kind of grim type sound that could have worked pretty well. I just question. I think Chester Bennington is obviously like a high praise kind of candidate as far as that kind of goes with what he did for Linkin Park, but this is just like a good alternative. But I do feel like Mark Wakefield is like a good alternative to kind of see how it could have been in that more grim and kind of East Coast kind of sense as far as that kind of happens. So it's just a good thing. It's too bad that that didn't become like a reality and they could have had 2 bands going as far as that kind of went, kind of like Corey Taylor with Stone Sour and some stuff like that, I would have to say. Social score gets a 9. In terms of the future, like Linkin Park has dropped like the 20th anniversary of Meteora, so that's a good concept as far as that kind of happens. I think the next one's probably going to be the 20th anniversary of Minutes to Midnight. But yeah, this is a pretty good project here. Definitely recommend seeking it out if you can find it, even if it's bootleg or something like that. This is a pretty good project here, and yeah.